My job.
And I'm going to go to the mural board myself, and I can jump back and forth, but it's kind of nice to see everybody's faces, so I won't have it on the whole time, but you're very welcome to go navigate around. So I'm going to share my screen, just let you know what I'm looking at. So just to zoom out, well, way out, I don't mean to go that far. Last summer, we did a 3-day, 6-session, no, 9-session.
8 sessions.
No, we did 6. We did 6, 9 hours.
6 sessions.
And then we were doing these check-ins over here on the right. Lots of great material. So that's anybody that hasn't been here before, navigate your way through. On the right side is the outline, and this sort of zooms you into certain parts. So here's a sample campaign from one of Scott's courses. We actually had people in the Institute develop their own course plan, at least a rough draft. That's familiar with everybody. We did some more background explaining how it works, and then we have links to all kinds of resources. And then everything else here are other people's, are the initial course plans that people were developing. So here's Riva's, and Riva's on the call. We also, when they finish their syllabuses, we put them here. You just zoom in with your mouse or your trackpad, really, it's pretty easy. You can download these things or open them with that button. So that's basically the way it works. For this meeting, at this stage, if you're following the model, pretty much the campaigns should have been identified, and students should ideally have their demands and targets. So we want to talk a little bit about that. We want to then, if we have time, talk about what are they doing to build power, how's that going, and then I think we should be able to get through those first two for sure. But the last one, if we have time, it's now they're far enough along where group dynamics begins to sort of reveal itself, and we're sort of curious about how that's going and what you have to say about that. Because we're a very small group and we have a couple new members, we'll just go real quickly around, just your name, your school, if you're teaching a course or where you're hoping to teach one in the future. So I'm Bobby Hackett. I'm at the Bonner Foundation, working with Scott for, I don't know, 5 years or so now to kind of spread his model for experiential teach social action by having students do it. Our goal in a sentence is that every campus, every semester, there's a course teaching students social action by having them do it. And that last thing, having them do it, is the big leap for a lot of folks. So that's me. Scott, introduce yourself, and I'll just call everybody else real quick.
So I'm Scott Myers-Lipton. I'm a professor at San Jose State. I've been here 23 years. You all know who I am, so I won't say anymore. I'm excited because next week I'm helping host Tommy Smith and John Carlos, who are the two men behind me in that picture with their fists raised. We celebrate it every year on our campus, what they did in Mexico City against racism and poverty in the United States. So super excited about that event.
Okay, so Adrian, Riva, and then Sophia. I don't think I'm saying it right, but you'll have to help me with that. Go to Adrian, just introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Adrian Griffin at Baldwin Wallace University in Berea, Ohio, near Cleveland. And I work as a staff member in our community engagement office. And I am teaching a co-curricular course. It is a year-long experience, so it's following a slightly different model as this one, but still same content.
Great.
Hi, I'm Riva Brown. I'm a public relations professor at the University of Central Arkansas in Conway. I am also the program coordinator for our Bachelor of General Studies program. My multicultural public relations class is doing this social action project, and they had to do something connected to diversity and however they define that. So we're working on a project with the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance.
And we'll be talking about your campaigns, which we have up.
Cool.
Is it Sophia? Zovia? How do you say it? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry.
I'm Zolfia, so I teach in Peace and Conflict Studies at Guilford College in Greensboro, North Carolina. And currently I teach a course and it's titled Peace Building for Divided Societies, Reconciliation and Justice. And I usually teach for sustainable food systems as well, a course on food justice, then conflict transformation, and many other courses as well.
Yeah, thank you.
And Sophia's going to be in the Winter Institute, but we invited, those people are signing up. We have around 20 so far. So if you know colleagues, please invite them to that too. But Sophia, I said, to those folks, I said, hey, you can come on and start participating. And so thank you for taking that invitation.
Great. All right, Walt, if you're able to chat a little bit, and then Rachel.
Sure. Walt Paquin. I'm at Bluffton University in Bluffton, Ohio. I am the director of the social work program, and this semester my community practice class is engaging in social action campaigns.
Great.
Hi, folks. Hi, folks. So my name is Rachel Berkowitz. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Public Health and Recreation at San Jose State University. I am teaching, I've kind of, for my first semester, teaching our community organizing for health promotion course within our Masters of Public Health program. And currently, they do have a kind of community organizing activity as one of the assignments, but inspired by Dr. Angie Buckner, who is currently with our undergraduate students doing a social action course. She shared her experience with the Institute with me. And so I'm kind of in a learner space to figure out, there's other aspects of that course that need to kind of remain, but try to understand. I would love to strengthen that social action project to be more grounded in kind of proactive social action, and ideally, resulting in sustainable change, so that they're getting the experience of it, which is what the activity is, but it's a little more disjointed right now. So I would potentially apply for the Summer Institute. Maybe I'm like I said, I'm in a learner and exploration space. And so thank you, Scott, for inviting me to the group. And I love getting the emails, and I hear about stuff from Angie, and I'm reading the book. So I'm an explorer and excited to be here.
Great. That's great. Well, everybody starts that way. And it's nice to have everybody here. All right, I'm going to share my screen for a second. And on the right, the second item down is fall courses and campaigns. And we're just going to talk about initially the campaigns that have been developed and where they stand in terms of demands and targets. And Riva, you're the first one. If anybody hasn't seen Riva's syllabus, you can go here and hit open. Riva, I think I got an email from Scott that had the demands right here on the screen. I'm going to turn the screen off or stop the share. People can go look at it on their own. But just tell us a little bit about what's happening. But before you do, I just want to make one big point. And this is a small group, so it won't be that hard, I think. But it's a really interesting question for me. I'm not a practitioner of this, right? I work at a foundation. I support campuses. I'm called a tech support, is what I call myself in this project. And what we're trying to create here is a little bit of a culture of people feeling comfortable to share where they are, what the students are doing, and get constructive feedback from folks that's not feeling harsh or negative. What we've seen, and I think Scott would attest to it, his own experience. He's 18, 19 years into teaching this course, fall and spring. But from what I've heard, it takes the second time you teach it a little bit better than the first time. The third time you make some. So that's just the nature of it. And for most of you, this is the first lap around. So I just want people to feel both comfortable to share what's working, what's not working, what the kind of their, and then also for us to feel comfortable asking questions that may feel like hard questions, but just do that in the spirit of we're all just in a learning process. We don't know each other that well. Reba, we and Adrian, and Walt, we spent 3 strong days together and have lots of conversations in between. So I think there's a certain comfort level, but it's still, I think you get the idea. So Reba, can just talk about yours, and I'll just pose one question. My impression is this is a single campaign with 3 demands. I wasn't sure how to label it. So if the first you could tell me, I'll just update it. Does the campaign have a name?
Yes, it's that's a great thing, because I don't think they've come up with the name for the campaign. They've come up with the name for the group, Bears Against Student Hunger. So
Perfect.
that's what that is. When I did send you a flyer, so I guess that's the name. Anyway, to talk about the campaign. So this is the first time I'm doing this, and in my class, there's normally 15 plus students. I ended up with 5. And so I decided to invite in the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance to pitch to the students. And they had a whole list of legislation. The leader of that organization is a former lawmaker, state representative who now works on the city council in a nearby city. And so she's very active in these issues. And there was a whole list of legislation and policy changes. And, she narrowed it down to the 3 that were college student focused. And the students picked one about meal swipes, dining dollars. So students that live on campus, they have the meal card, but if they don't use all of their dining dollars, they don't roll over. They just kind of go away. So apparently this is a part of more of a national movement to have college students donate the dining dollars to students who might be in need. And so the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance was wanting to have this implemented statewide at universities, in Arkansas. And so anyway, my students, they latched onto this. They were very excited about it from day one. Even though the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance hadn't come. And so we're moving ahead with that. They're moving ahead with that, but just for our campus, because it's just the 5 of them. And they've gotten some runaround in terms of who their target should be. So their demands were creating a need-based fund that enables students to use leftover meal swipes and donations to aid food insecurity, provide funds to students with dining dollars on their bear cards to be used in the student center, which there are a lot of restaurants, as well as the campus cafeteria. And then for our day of giving, which is a very big deal, create a fund so people can donate money to this Bears Against Student Hunger Fund, and that will be added to the dollars. So because they have these 3 demands, as multiple targets, and that's been an issue, with the multiple targets, because they keep getting the runaround with, oh, well, I thought I could help you. I thought I was the person, but no, it's actually this person. And so that's been a challenge that they've been dealing with. Luckily for us, one of the students in the class is a part of the Student Government Association in some way. So the class just decided this week that they're going to create this big presentation to pitch to the Student Government Association to get their buy-in, so the Student Government Association can help push this issue, because Bears Against Student Hunger is 5 students so far. They've also tried to get allies with the food pantry. They've allies. We have some type of group, something food recovery network, any type of food related organization. They've reached out to them to be allies for this. And so until they can speak to the Student Government Association coming up soon, they've reached out to the committees, Student Government Association committees that this would go to. So there's some type of food dining committee and another one, something related, and to try to get their buy-in before they pitch it to the whole Student Government Association Senate. So that's where they are in terms of I wanted them to be a little bit further ahead, but the target issue has been a lot to deal with, because we're dealing with housing, food, Aramark, the foundation because of the creating the funds, and the Student Government Association. So it's just 5 or 6 different ones right now, as they get it narrowed down. But the event that they decided on is they didn't want to have like a press conference type of thing. So they're going to have a fancy tabling event where they're going to have food where say a pizza, and this slices represents 21% of college students who are hungry. I don't know. The stats are on the flyer that I submitted, because the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance had done this in-depth study looking at food insecurity among college students in Arkansas. So even though those Hunger Relief Alliance has not made those stats public, they had given our students permission to use them for this campaign. So whatever they're going to do to kind of raise awareness and have students sign to say they support this initiative, they will have food that, with this slice is X% and it represents this. This slice is this percent and it represents this. And I got the class designated as service learning, even though this is a little bit different from what we normally do for service learning at our university, but I got it designated, and that allows us to apply for a $250 grant that the students could use to help pay for things for their event that they're planning. So that's my overview. I don't know if that was too long or too short, but
Well, I mean, given the size of our group, I think it was a perfect length.
okay.
So who has any questions?
This is great, Adrian. Yeah, I think we are they do have information about Swipe Out Hunger. I appreciate you sharing this. Yeah.
It's harder with Aramark though.
Yeah, that's the challenge, because Aramark has been kicking us down the road, but the students have they've started some of their research and have found out that there are other Aramark campuses that do this.
That's good.
According to what they have told me. I haven't seen their research yet. It's not due yet, but that's what they've been telling me. And that's part of their presentation that they're working on for the Student Government Association. Like, yes, Aramark is a headache, but look at what Aramark has done on this. Because Aramark is, oh goodness. Yeah.
Reva, I have a question on demand 2. Providing funds. I mean, one of the things that whenever my students say they want to provide, they're asking for money, I always tell them, come up with an amount, because if you come in and say, we want $100,000, that's going to get one response. And if you want $5,000, that's going to get another response. So my recommendation is just to clarify what is a number in there that is significant and that's realistic, that could, that you could shoot for in your demand.
Okay, that's great.
Because other, and I go back to a campaign that my students ran, was like when they did the air conditioning campaign, every administrator was like, yeah, we should have air conditioning, of course. And then the student said, it's going to cost $3 million. Do you agree now? And they're like, oh no, we can't do that. No, we have air conditioning now. So they won that campaign, but they figured out then how much it was going to cost. And that clarified for the target to have a response, and then to have a negotiation about, that number, right? And what's going to, how much is it really going to cost? So I think that's key. And the other thing is, like, each one of those sounds like it's going to have a different target.
Yes.
So just to have, like, under each demand to have a target. I think that's my recommendation. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because otherwise you want to make sure the students know where to direct their energy.
Yes, there's a list of targets, and though the way I emailed it to y'all, it was just all lumped together, but they have, they know the specific target for the specific number.
Yeah,
It's
that's,
just
Scott,
I didn't
Scott,
email it clarifying it that
That
way
was
in the
helpful.
email. But
Scott,
thanks for that.
if you can click somewhere else, because nobody can touch that without, yeah, there you go.
Oh.
So Reva, if you want to go in and you can, underneath each of those, you could put target and add that if you wanted to.
And
Okay.
UCA, what is that? Just so we all know.
University of Central Arkansas.
There you go.
Mhm. Yeah.
You all knew that, but I mean, you know,
Awesome, awesome.
we at San Jose State didn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for these tips. I appreciate it. I'm gonna.
And then
tell
Reva,
the
I have one
students.
question, which is, are your students fired up?
I think 4 of the 5 are. I say that
80%.
because
That's not bad.
That's
right,
good.
because one, I'm trying to see, looking down the hall. I just think I think that she's one of these higher achievers and she wants things to be done a certain way, but all 4 of them are agreement that it's another way. So she hasn't been coming to class. She hasn't been responding to them. She's just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. So they've had to redo her flyer because she wouldn't give them access to Canva, just like crazy.
So let's cycle back to that, because that's that second,
Mhm.
that's that third topic about group dynamics, but that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
So looking at the mural board and just going alphabetically, Angie's not here, but
You just
Adrian's
text-
here.
Yeah, she texted me and said she couldn't make
And
it.
Adrian, your students are still, they haven't gotten to that stage yet. Is that right? Or
We're at the point, and I did put on the mural board the project topics they're looking at. So we're at the point where they have kind of started to narrow where they want to focus. And this year was a transitional year. So we just started using the textbook this year, and I'm pushing more like advocacy focus. But in previous years, it was like a change project as broadly as they defined it. So what I'm finding is the students are going to like the program mindset, or the like, I'm going to host a conference for youth. And so what I did this past week was, okay, let's first identify what is the problem you're trying to address. And we used the problem tree, where you like put the problem on the trunk and then you do what are the root causes. And we did like a 5 whys to get deeper, and then the consequences. And then from there, I had them think of like, how might I address this such and such aspect of the problem. And so I'm using some strategic planning tools, and I'll put this importance difficulty matrix in the chat that I'm using. Yeah, seems like my role is our social innovation manager. So I'm kind of blending some tools here. So I think that, and we're going to revisit that, and I think that it'll narrow, but some students, and it's hard too, because I've encouraged them to work with each other. They have to collaborate with somebody. So it might be outside of our class, but again, I didn't require that when I was recruiting them. So this is a learning year for me, certainly. Yeah. But things like asynchronous class days on election day, having, getting an advocate position on our campus to help students navigate the Title IX process. Black Business Fridays, having Black-owned businesses on campus. So I'm going to like work with them to think again about how could you do policy with that. But what was really helpful is, so we've done this program in different formats for past years, and we brought 3 of our past students who did it last year. So thinking of Scott's model, how he has people pitch, I brought 3 past students. I brought a student government rep and a couple other student org reps to pitch ideas of what they're hearing as common issues on campus. And I think that that was a mobilizing moment for our students and gave them a lot of confidence. And then I compiled that list of ideas and I shared it with my boss, who's the VP of Student Affairs, and also with our Faculty Senate president. And I'm inviting both of those people, which, this will be an interesting test pilot for me. I've asked them to come to one of our later seminars, including with the student government president, so that our students can share what their initial ideas are and get feedback. Because we had the VP of Student Affairs come last year, but not till April. And she sometimes has like a better lay of the land, but those could also be their targets. So I've sort of like set up the meetings for them, and I'm just intrigued to see how this goes early on.
Yeah.
But they're fired
And
up.
just logistically, are you meeting with them once a week?
Yeah, we meet once a week. And then a couple of the weeks we've done some off-campus things, like we're going to a community dialogue program next Wednesday night. And then we did a giving circle in the community. We've done some of those activities, so we've missed a couple class times, but they've enjoyed them as well.
Yeah. And when you meet for how long?
Just an hour and a half.
Hour and a half, 90 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, and they are compensated in this program. So they get $500 at the end of each semester. And then I've allocated $100 supply budget for their projects. And I've said, if you collaborate, you can compile your money together. So
That's very good.
yeah, my little nudge.
So any questions? Comments?
Adrian, could you please say a little bit more about Giving Circle and also the funding?
Yeah, we got a grant through my office this year to launch some of our social innovation work and to fund nonprofit internships. And so I'm able to kind of like use this as a social innovation project and use the funding for it. And it's through our local community foundation that has like a pool of funds that a lot of our colleges have applied for. But we've ran this program for 8 years, but it was more like using a different social change model, not as much social action focus. And so we've had it budgeted into my office's budget to compensate the students. And second question was
about the Circle of Giving.
Oh yeah, I'm part of a local giving circle. It's called the Awesome Foundation. There are chapters across the country. And so we just had a meeting that happened to align on a Wednesday night when I usually do the class anyways. And so I checked with my circle and invited our students. And then I told them, you all have $25 that you can give to one of the orgs. And they ended up all pooling their money to give to the org. So that was a cool experience, and it was good for my group, my circle, to hear from them, and like they validated, like, we need your ideas because you're seeing different perspectives than we are. But we did use some good philanthropy curriculum that week, just coincidentally from Edgar Villanueva, who wrote the book Decolonizing Wealth, and there's like a 15-minute Skull Foundation video from him, just kind of overviewing that. And so I think that was an sort of unexpected element that I incorporated, but an interesting element. And then there's Celebrate Those Who Give Black, so celebrating African-American giving. There's an exhibit in our town that I was able to have them do a little research on, to also think about equity and fundraising and like what a philanthropist looks like, and challenging our preconceived notions around that. So it's a good twist to the session, and I think
I'm sorry. Unlike Riva and Scott, let's say that when you only have a semester, and they've got to get that campaign chosen by 4th class, maybe 5th class, but you got to do it quickly and launch. I think the model is 9th week. You have a little more time to let that percolate even as you learn stuff, or is that right? I mean, is that the feeling you have?
But I think if I would do this again, I would have them read the book over the summer.
You mean when you do it again?
Yes. When I do this again, I would have them, if I did it in this co-curricular model, I would suggest, because I selected them in April, so I would have probably had them read the book over summer, but then like revisit elements of it, because they came in really fired up, and I think they wanted to start even earlier, and now it's getting into like midterm stress point for them, and I think they're still excited, but capitalizing on that energy early on to get them in the projects. And something that is so interesting that's coming up is they're asking me, like, do I have to get permission to start my project, to launch my project? And so that, like, power dynamic. I'm like, no, you're launching it now. Like I'm asking them to talk to at least 2 stakeholders by November 9th and share their vision stand, we call it, or org wrap by that date. And I was like, that's launching right there. And so it's interesting, like one wants to start an Instagram page kind of anonymously collecting sexual misconduct survivor stories. And she's like, do I need to get permission from the university? And I'm like, this is advocacy and action.
Yeah.
And
the other question I have has to do with, I've been you're in the community service, community engagement, and we talk about civic engagement, but we very rarely, and we maybe talk about social action or policy change, actual change campaigns, but we just talk about it. And part of what you said earlier was that introducing this whole opportunity to your students, they came in with that other mindset of we're gonna launch a project to directly address something, and shifting that thinking over to we're gonna try to change a policy, and it's literally a different thing.
Yeah.
Maybe the same theme, maybe the same issue, but so it sounds like you're in kind of this middle zone where they came in thinking one thing and you're introducing this new thing. Is that something you also would change next time you teach it or lead it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to see how this year goes, but because a lot of them knew past fellows, they knew that they did kind of like, a program. So that's what they were coming in with. I think what's been helpful though is, obviously reading the book. I sent them Scott's, the demands that I showed them in class, the demands, and I think that was inspiring. And I'm like, you're part of a national movement doing social. So I'm trying to like pump up what it is with those options or examples. But I think it was pivotal this last session to really think about, okay, what is the problem? And then they've started to write like ideas for what would change it. And I think when they go and like rank them from 1 to 10, that's going to help them focus in and think, maybe my program isn't the solution to educational equity. Maybe it's higher priority somewhere else. So I sometimes hesitate on like the problem only focus, because we think about asset focused community development as well. But I think in this case, it's like, let's just take a step back from program, get to what it is that you're thinking and what the root causes are. And then let's design what to do from there.
Nice.
So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, any other questions or comments?
I was going to add one thing. It's like, to me, a lot of these are about, this is on page 88. I talk about policy. And part of that is like, if you're changing an administrative system to work better, that's a change in policy in my mind. So I think a lot of those, if you look through them, they're calling upon the administrative system to do better than it has. And that, where if they did a project and they did it like once and then it never happens again, that's not what we're asking for. But if we could change the way the system works, that is change. So I think, to put it in that framework, I think, a lot of these make, good sense, and, they're good demands. I mean, I think you have to be clarified and narrowed, and, and a cost to, like you say, you want to, like, how much is that going to cost to have an advocate, for example, like who's going to pay for that? And, and then that clarifies who the target's going to be. But you have a year, so you're not under the stress that others are who teach in a semester under, which is get those demands fast. But I think it's awesome, and I look forward to see how they come to fruition.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think like they went to, let's have a community garden. And it's like, but why do you need that? Oh, well, they want more sustainable food systems in the dining halls. Like that's getting a little deeper into what, like the root, the centering driving force of it that's really going to keep them motivated. So I think continuing to nudge that.
The other experience I've seen is that the folks who are doing the community service work, it's highly collaborative, essentially friendly, right? And then organizing to build a garden is just an extension of that. Still friendly, still collaborative. And there's this big leap to where you're going to have to be a little bit, you have to make a demand, of somebody who may not want to say yes. That's kind of the whole point.
So,
and to prepare for that, you have to have an analysis, like you said, that, you know, you're a tree, right? Sort of, and that's just that's a kind of work in terms of the analysis and a kind of sort of change of stance that folks, a lot of folks aren't comfortable with. And I would include in that folks, us, sometimes us, like staff, faculty, we're not comfortable necessarily in that mode. And so that's part of this whole thing. And I think we take strength in numbers on a campaign you do, but I think even our group will take some strength in numbers that we're all sort of trying to move our, you know, change our own work, change our own teaching in your guys' case a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm trying to use like subtle opportunities to advocate, where I met with our board trustee chair, who's a big supporter of our university. Is like, here are some of the projects, FYI, that the students are thinking about. And Casey's, so the more I can like share their ideas too, it's another form of advocacy that I'm trying to weave in, because we are such a small and fairly flat hierarchical institution to do that.
Yeah. Remind me how many students are with you right now?
There's only 9 of them. And so I did see a low level of interest in the program, but we've kind of hovered around that the last few years. And so
COVID slowed that kind of thing down. I've noticed that.
Yeah, and I don't know if the year-long commitment is also hard for them to commit to either.
Yeah, interesting. Walt, I hesitate to, I want to call on you, but I also know that you may just want to take a pass right now.
No, I'm glad to share, and actually have a couple of things I had questions about.
Great.
So
Can I also maybe perhaps after Walt shares, I also have some questions that are coming up for me.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. Yeah.
So my students have there are 3 groups. One is a group against sexual misconduct on campus. Another one is promoting, or they want a free store on campus to provide sustainable and reused goods for students. And a third group is working on campus communication. All 3 groups have demands and targets. I've been out this week, so I did not get those from them. But I know that one of the demands from the Title IX group is that they want every student trained in Title IX processes, not just student athletes, and they want that done in a way that is respectful of them as young adults. And the Free Store group is pushing for a space on campus initially, where they could have a free store that would, you know, not only could students, you know, donate clothing versus throwing those kind of items out, but also have hygiene products, maybe other sexual health products as well. And then the communication group is working to revamp or demanding to revamp our weekly communication that goes out to the students, informing them of events on campus. So those are the 3 campaigns and their demands. In terms of the targets, they've struggled a little bit. Sometimes they're like, oh, we know this person, and they'll think this is a good idea, we're going to go to them. And so I keep pushing, is this the person that can say yes? So going back to that like question of power. So they've all done their org wraps. One group that is a little bit enthusiastic, they sent their org wrap to their potential allies, and in it included, we are demanding. And so I got a call from an administrator like, well, what's this? So I was like, well, they did get a little ahead of themselves. I think they probably should not have quite sent that out in that way. And so I'm realizing like I maybe need to see a little bit more of what they're doing. I also got a call on from the PR office about Instagram pages that were going up, and so we tweaked those a little bit. I was thinking that was going to be a fight I was going to have to engage in, and they were like, no, the students say it's part of a class, it's okay. So we've done that, and all their Instagram pages have over 150 followers, so they're starting that process of developing allies, and they will launch their campaigns the week after next. So we're heading into fall break next week, and then the following week they'll have their campaign kickoffs.
Well, it just sounds awesome. I was typing up your notes, or as best I could, on the mural board, but it's quite weak. But you might, under the
I'll
courses
get those.
and
I've
campaigns.
put a place for them to put those, and I will get those as soon as I
Yeah,
get
yeah,
those.
great. And
I'll
you
forward them to
you can
Bobby.
flesh it out there, and also over at your course syllabus if you'd like. So questions,
will-
comments on for Walt?
I want to say one quick thing as a teacher. Last week, class ends at 3:45, and at 3:48, they were all still sitting at their tables, like working frantically on. Like, I'm like, this is like great. You know, the students are like, you know, not packing up there; they're at it. So
So great. So great. So anybody have a questions or for Walt?
I would like to know a little bit. First of all, this was a great update, and I was taking notes to go back and say, oh, such and such they already have content on their social media, Instagram page, and they already have X number of followers. How is that coming? Right? They created an Instagram page and started creating content, and I haven't seen anything up there. So I would love the link to their Instagram. So in my notes that I'm sending them today, following up on what we talked about today, I can say, look what this school is doing with their Instagram. So please drop that in the chat. It was interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about their creation of the organizational wrap and what they have done with it so far? I know you mentioned emailing it to allies, but can you talk a little bit more about how they use the wrap? Because that has kind of confused my students in terms of what they need to do with that, because it's similar to the message, but it's not the message, according to the book. Yeah.
right. Yeah. I had them use Scott's template to form that organizational wrap. And the way I crafted it to them was that this was what they were going to use to engage people that were interested in what they're doing. And so that when they're talking to their friends, when they're talking to other people, when they're talking to allies, they can use that to say, here's the issue, here's where we're interested, here's the statistic, here's what we want done. Now, I'm not sure if that's right or not from Scott's perspective, but that's how I utilized it. And we went through them in class. I did the last set yesterday virtually, and then we sort of said, well, what connects with you, what doesn't connect with you, what can be strengthened, and so we are working to get that process. So that's how I'm using the organizational wrap.
Okay, that's good. Because we have revised it so many times, and I hear them working in a group. Oh, this is perfect. This is this. And then I get in there like, well, maybe tweak this. And I don't want them to become discouraged, but it needs to have some teeth to it, right? It can't be, we want to end food insecurity. That's quite vague, when you look at what they're really trying to do, because that's very broad, and that is not exactly what they're doing, right? So
yeah. And then we had some of that, and so we kept pushing, like, what does that mean? And
So, Walt, I want to say one thing about like the use of the word demand. Just, administrators hate it, and but that doesn't mean it can't be said. It just also depends when it's being said, like, at what time in the campaign. And then usually when they say it, my students say it is like when they launch, they do their public event and launch, and they demand action. They demand these things. It's not usually in the backside kind of, because, but they still don't like it. But in the context of a public event, they at least understand it maybe more.
yeah, and that's when I realized that they had used it as part of their org wrap, that they were then emailing out to potential allies, is like when it was like and I think it was sort of but it's a learning curve, right? So
Yeah, I noticed too with the org wrap that one of my students was like, okay, can I do a PowerPoint? Like, I really want to do a visual. And I was like, sometimes all you have is yourself, and you need to be distinct and like as if you're kind of tabling out there. And I shared an example of when I did organizing and how short of a window I had and how I would summarize it. But it was sort of interesting of like that programmed presentation mode and how to distinguish that from the purpose of the wrap.
Nice. All right. Well, let's it sounded like Rachel, you had some questions, and maybe Sophia. So why don't we'll go those, and if we have time, we'll talk a little about group dynamics. That'll be the first one we talk about next time. Go ahead, Rachel.
Well, and I definitely am happy to cede my time. That sounds like group dynamics would be like, but I guess my question maybe, just because I'm still kind of learning about this, it sounds like the approach, it's interesting to hear the kind of tension between more like community development oriented organizing and like Alinsky social action organizing. And this definitely falls into the Alinsky social action. So I would at some point, and maybe I'm working on the application. I think if I can do the winter one, I think that would make sense. But just that grappling with the different kind of like the different like Rothman ecosystems of organizing, and then the different inspirational whatnots. I'm curious how, if at all, y'all engage with that context in the class, or are your classes very much like soup to nuts, like the social action ecosystem? Because that's one of the challenges I'm facing. Like part of our curriculum is that kind of broader exposure, and so knowing I want to keep that, but also knowing that their team project is meant to be essentially social action organizing in one way, shape, or form. So that's kind of
let me give one part of the answer, and I ask Scott to answer. Let me just give the time. So the content part, not the substantive, but the time wise. So if you go to the mural board, and I know this is still new to you. If you go to the sample course plan, basically what we figured out after doing this for a while and looking at Scott's course, this course plan, which is Scott's class, we just basically took his syllabus and mapped it. The campaign part of it, developing the campaign, fills up the first half of the class. We don't have any of the topics for the second half of the class. If you look at his syllabus, you'll see his syllabus, and you can talk about it, covers all kinds of campaigns because his class is about social action. Somebody else's course might be about climate change, and the rest of it's about climate change. So even as they're doing their campaign, as you can see, they're still working on the campaign in these lower parts here, and down here. The courses, the class, and the reading assignments aren't about that. So the big thing we've had to emphasize with folks applying to be part of this is if you're taking a current class, you roughly have, if you don't already teach social action, you have to drop half of the content, or devote half, because you have to devote half the time to get. Now, in your case, some of the topics you already cover, those are the same themes. So it wouldn't be exactly that, but it's kind of front loading that first half to get the campaigns launched. You have a lot of time to cover the other stuff. So let Scott answer the questions actually substantively, because I don't understand any of that language.
So Bobby, could you bring that back up what you just showed?
Sure.
And go to the yellow box on change theory. So that's where that would be, Rachel, is that, and what I think the power of what we're trying to say is like, you can put whatever you want in that section, but we want you to cover change theory. And so in my book, I cover the Alinsky model, and then all the various aspects of Alinsky, from CSO to ACORN to faith in action to the feminist critique of that, the critical kind of race theory critique of that. So that's one. And then I also covered women-centered organizing, dating back to the enslavement up to the Black Women's Political Councils up to Black Lives Matter. So that was what I chose to cover in those sections. But you can, we don't want to put that kind of restriction on anybody. It's like, but you should talk about change theory in the best way you know how to talk about change theory, right? So I think that's, and in all of these things, and you'll see some of them, they're more of like, these topics, building power. There's a lot of
Right.
ways to build power. Well, I have in my book, you could use my book and see the SML way of doing it. Or a lot of folks have gone totally outside and used other people to talk about building power. But I know, here's the thing, if you're talking about change, you got to talk about building power, and
Right.
it's up to you to how to figure out how to do it. We give some guidelines, the book's the guideline, but then
Got
you have
it.
opportunities, yeah.
Okay, that's super helpful. And yeah, I know a lot of this is just I need to like go through the class and explore.
That's all right. No, you're
what's-
good. You're good.
But I appreciate it.
Very
Thank
good
you.
question. But it sounds like you had more than one question. What?
No, that was because I'm now my wheels are turning in terms of
Okay.
that, like how to
Okay.
fit it. So I'm good.
Great. And just so you know, the way that winter session in January will run is we will we have basically this is the starting point, a blank. We have all these topics that, well, this is somebody's, but basically, all the topics that Scott covers in the campaign. You don't have to use them, but the idea is you drag them over and begin to slowly and then modify them. And then obviously the substantive stuff, which is the reading assignments, you begin to map it out. But get people to start thinking about that immediately and
Yeah.
wrestle with the question of time and content and actions and all that kind of stuff.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Sophia, do you have any questions or reactions to what you're hearing?
I think this is great. I think the examples help me to understand how the course is structured and the flows with the campaign and social action. So that was helpful.
Good. So let's circle back. We have a couple minutes left, and Riva, you look down the hallway again.
Mhm.
So team of 5, one member, sounds like a
Hold on, somebody left a note on my door saying I'm being loud.
oh.
So allow me to step away and make sure that my door is fully closed. So excuse me.
Yes. And by the way, everybody, that's why I'm at my office, because I'm loud too. And if you never know how tall anybody is, but I'm about 5'8", and I think I'm a little guy, so I feel like I have to make my voice louder just to be heard. My wife kicks me out.
Bobby, I just want to say, Bobby, that if anyone has any questions about mine, I already set them.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I set, the demands of the student for campaigns in my class. And the only thing I'd want to say is that, my note, you could see that I'm still, we just finished class 13, and I'm still probing them to clarify some things. So I'll have notes in there, like how much is it going to cost? Is the city going to pay for it? Who qualifies for this? How, have you written the legislation? So I'm on my mural board probing those folks as they go through. I would just say one other thing about the Students Against Sexual Assault. Like sometimes you're given a gift by the social organizing gods, and the Department of Justice has announced that they're going to be on campus next week. So the students will hold a press conference right at the beginning of them coming to campus, and they're interviewing students about sexual assault on our campus.
Wow.
Because it's so out of control. And so here is like, that's just like, I told them, they're like, oh, can we do it next? I'm like, look, it's up to you, but I would do something. Even though we haven't totally prepared for it, this is a gift from the social action gods to get huge. I just told them there'll be every press in the world at that event, because it's so powerful that the DOJ is coming to the campus to investigate. So, right. So that I would just say that, I could talk more about the demands, but if you have any questions, you can email me. I think we have 4 powerful campaigns, and we're just about to enter into the launching of ours. We're going to, and for us, the launch is the discussion of it, about how to launch. We've just done strategy and tactics, and there'll be a week of how to launch, and then they'll start planning their launch. So really, they'll talk about it in week 9 and then launch in week 10.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I want to remind the new people about is that Scott was teaching a class during COVID, and then last spring, the first 2 weeks were still under COVID protocols. So we worked together to create a mural board, this kind of setup, this platform, which is free to educators. And basically what evolved was they developed they documented the development of their campaign right on the mural board. This is a sample one from last year, maybe it's even this year's, but it has the posters up here and target analysis and the demands. And basically as the class went on, they filled in different sections. Very, very effective because it's kind of, they had to show their work right away. They could see the other folks' work right away, and it was easy to find it. And so it's an in-person class, but they still are using this technology, at least through that a certain part of the class. Once the campaigns get going, it's a reference point, but it's not really the focal point of the class, but it's still a place that helps get that thing going and sort of disciplines the process. And, you know, Scott's getting very much more adept at mural board. That's why my tech support role is lessened as time has gone on. But if you guys think about doing that, I'd be happy to show you what I've done, and you could take a good look at Scott's stuff as well. If people can stay a little longer, and Riva, if the door's firmly shut.
Yes, I can speak now.
Yeah, just sort of, you described there being a 1 of 5.
Yes.
Sounds like type A. I like to get it my way, not get in their way, and sort of opting out.
Well, yeah, on that. So when they had those first 4 portfolios due, you know, I was reading about, because I moved my group dynamics up because it was only 5 of them, and I knew we needed to deal with that and the leadership and all of that early on. And so I'm reading all four of them like, oh, everything's going great and blah, blah, blah. And I'm observing in class because I give them time in class to talk. And then I noticed that this student was very quiet. And so, you know, reading her portfolio, I saw her concerns. And I just think, you know, more of a type A, but, you know, maybe more of an elitist type, and these students are beneath me type of things. I'm so much smarter than them. But since they're all agreeing, I'll just go along with it. That whole, because we were talking about that whole from Scott's book. So she didn't show up one day last week. And, you know, with 5 students, if somebody's absent, that's serious. Another student didn't show up, but she was engaging in the group me during class. She was responding to them and still working, right? Even though she wasn't physically there. The other student didn't respond at all, period. And so yesterday, she emailed me and said, I'm not coming to class. I'm not feeling well. I might try to come. I said, oh, I'm so sorry. Well, we can put you on Zoom or Google Meet. You don't even have to be on camera. If you're not feeling well, we just want you to listen to what they're talking about so you can contribute. You can contribute in the chat. You don't even have to talk. Like I just did every single thing. And even the students were reaching out to her through their group me, sending her personal text. She hasn't responded to anybody.
Yeah. So she may be dropping the class. I mean, at that point.
I think so. And the
I say, Scott, when in your classes, you have 25, sometimes 35. I mean, you have pretty large classes. So if that would happen, you often would let the student go switch to another campaign.
Yeah.
There's only one campaign. There's only 5 people. Your options are pretty limited.
Yeah, I'd say we've had similar things, just so you know. But you know what's happening. A couple of students have disappeared, and I thought they had dropped, and they came back, and they felt even weird about being in the group because they've missed so much. But it was around financial. My students I would say I had 3 students that couldn't afford the book. That's how, and 2 of them I was copying, taking pictures and sending to them every class. That's the reality of my students at a working class institution. You know, the students don't have the money, and or in this case, there could be a housing crisis, losing their housing. So I just try to, in that case, I just try to be as open as possible, talk to the group, and deal as much as you can with a student that's not there. I've had, in my experience, I'd like to hear about maybe other faculty have had this too, where students aren't contributing. And that's a big issue. Like they're not doing their fair share. And so I've had to sit down with the group in that section. And actually I encouraged one group to break up, which they did. One of the groups broke up because 2 out of the 4 are not doing anything. And if that case, if 2 of 4 are not doing anything and it's 4, it gets to be a bad experience. So that group actually broke up. And so, you know, and I think and it's better for those, for the long run, I think, to break up a group sometimes. But in your case, you can't do it, Riva, because you only got one group. But
Yeah.
But it is a challenge when students aren't showing up, right, to get work done. Another challenge that I have is like half the group is really dynamic. There's 9 in students against sexual assault. Half the group is dynamic and the other half is not contributing very much. And so like, I gotta, you know, they just told me that last class, so I've got to sit down with them privately and then talk to them. But that's, I think, our role is to help the groups through that process. And you all know, because we all have colleagues that don't do very much, you know, that's a lifelong process of how to move a group along.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This is jumping ahead to probably the end of the semester, but I'm thinking a little bit about, just as you're talking about the, I'm thinking about your group actually. You know, they'll probably be able to do some actions, right? They'll get the attention of some folks, but even if they're going to be brushed off, at least they'll have a meeting with Aramark. I mean, I can imagine that. And then, you know, most of the time campaigns aren't won in a single semester, and sometimes they're not won at all. I mean, oftentimes they're not won at all, right? So I mean, the percentage of that is something that historically, even Scott, as successful as that has been over the years, it's not that 50% of the campaigns aren't won, right, Scott? I mean, it's
Yeah, but
at least, I mean,
I would say, and usually I always tell my students, they're usually not won because the group dynamics. It's not because the issue. The group dynamics didn't allow for them to launch and to really move. The students that have that a positive group dynamics, you know, a lot of times do win, not always, but do. And every once in a while, a group that doesn't have good dynamics, I had my students read about one of those campaigns where the group dynamic was not good. And, you know, because not everything's rosy, and they had to talk about that, you know, and I'm giving them opportunities to see that sometimes the group dynamics doesn't work, and what can we do to make it better and try to build in a culture of accountability, right?
Right. Well, part of what I was thinking then, it was about how the students how they'll feel about the class. Because it strikes me that you want to win, you want to have some successful actions at least. And if it kind of doesn't really gel the way you'd hoped, you might walk away and think, well, that wasn't a great class. I didn't learn a lot, but in fact, they're learning an enormous amount. But, you know, where it's like, you know, you play sports and it turns out training and all that stuff, all that rigor teaches you a lot too, whether you win the match or not, you know. And I'm just curious to know, Scott, how you guys have thought about that, and maybe Riva and Adrian, as you anticipate how this class will unfold, how you think your students, even at this stage, are feeling about their learning part of what they're doing. Do you feel like they're like getting exposed to something and getting stressed, maybe, you know, getting stressed a little bit?
I had 2 students in the first 5 classes walk up to me and said, "This is what I've hoped sociology was the whole time. Like, I thought we were going to be doing this all the time, and this is my only time we've actually done anything." So I had that. And then I always ask, particularly if a quiet student emails me, I'll always ask them, "How's the class going for you?" And I'm always surprised. They're like, even though they're quiet, they're like, "Oh my God, this is the best experience I've ever had." So, you know, it's a way to, you know, to reach out to those quieter students. But yeah, so I think I think, you know, I'm still doing, I don't know, I'd really encourage everyone to do the organizational wraps. I'm doing every class is starting that way. And they love that because it's them doing it to each other and they're learning from each other. So that's been a really positive. And again, it decenters me away from it. As much as I can decenter me is a good thing.
Got it. So Riva, just curious about that.
Yeah, I think early on, my students were like, oh yeah, we can easily win this. So it's no problem. We can easily win this. And so once I have, even though there's one student who's been kind of non-responsive in her own entitled way, every student is entitled in some way and they don't realize it. One student is always, well, my parent did this and did this when Bill Clinton was governor. And I mean, like all of this, and oh, well, my parents own whatever, right? And
Right.
they don't have to have dining dollars or meal swipes. So they don't understand from that perspective because they all come from kind of well-to-do families, even though they've been excited about this particular idea. I have started to have the conversation this week about, look at the great learning experience that you can have, that you, after you graduate, you can take it to your nonprofit organization, your community group, whatever. And I've been pushing that. So even if it doesn't work out here, look at what you've learned. Look at the attention you already got because you're putting this issue on people's radar, and it may not have been on their radar. Because we even though we are making great progress, we're definitely behind from where I wanted us to be, because Aramark, they've gone through 3 or 4 different people in Aramark already. And then the last one was like, oh no, I can't help you with that. That's whatever. And so Aramark is a big part of this. So I just didn't want them to get discouraged because of that. Like, well, look, the foundation has already said, yes, they're willing to help if you get the Aramark piece. And, the Student Government Association can help with that because they have more clout. You can use them as an ally. The food pantry on campus is not run by students, but a staff member. He's an ally. So that's the way I've had to couch it, so they can come away feeling like they have done something good, even if it doesn't work out.
Got it. Very helpful. And same kind of thing with you, Adrian, or is it too early to even worry about this?
A little early. There has been some attendance issues. So I just talked with a student of like, do you really have time to commit to this? Because again, it's not a class that is co-curricular. And for this student, she's dealing with pretty significant financial family things. And she's like, this is my one thing outside of all of that to get me out of that. And I think, last year I came into what was an existing program of this at the midpoint and was sort of like a co-teacher, but then kind of got thrown in a lot. And we had some not great group dynamics that I think came from like poor teaching organization. But those students who finished it, they still come back and share about
wonderful
and speak about it. So it didn't deter the power of it. And I think this year, our student body, I would say, I think it's like a 70% white students. Our Brain Fellows group is more than half students of color. And I think that this is providing a space for students to have conversations that they're not really having in other spaces on campus. And so it's also giving like some allyship and affinity building. So I there's some things that like, I'm going to do a conflict resolution workshop and we're about to go over group dynamics more because I can see some things if they start working together a little deeper popping up, but so far it hasn't been a hindrance to.
Yeah. And those are another set of tools that they'll take away with them as well, right? How to run a campaign, but how to, like Scott said, it's a lifelong process of knowing how to move a group forward.
Yeah, and I mix them a lot up in their brainstorming to talk about their tree or their like activity sheets, because there are like already people who know each other and those who don't. So I'm trying to do more of that, but we'll see how this plays out. Nice.
Well, we're hoping to go to 5:15 on in the East Coast, and we're sort of there. If you have time and want to tweak the text on the mural board, that'd be great. If you want to put a flyer up or whatever at any point moving forward, because we'll just keep building this out. We meet again in November. We did this survey, so 4 o'clock worked better this time. 3 o'clock, which is what we've done before, works better next time. So we'll make sure we get the announcement out to everybody again, and we'll come right back to the same mural board. I'll put the Zoom link here as well. If you lose it anywhere else, it'll be there. This is really fun, and it's really very satisfying. I tell you, Scott and I are really, really happy with this is taking root, and it's you guys working it and then getting new people to join us. And while we don't have a lot of people on these calls, we didn't expect that, but there's still a lot of people communicating with us, particularly with Scott, sharing what they're doing. And
always,
you know,
I mean,
Reeve, I remember you coming on and saying, well, you know, it's a communications class, and this is, you know, there's not the normal thing for this place. And there you are, and you're doing these great things. And I hope you're having as much fun doing it as we are. And I am listening to you talk about you're doing it.
Yeah, I'm grateful. I don't know. Luckily, I have tenure and promotion already, so I don't have to worry about the students giving bad course evaluations. But my concern is I've just got to get back to the content, the normal content of the class.
Yeah.
And that's why I was just like, we got to get this wrapped up by the end of this month. Whatever happens, I can't make it
well,
go
the campaigns
further.
keep going during that time, but then you start, I mean, that's what Scott does, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you got to get all this campaign up and running and to get to your communication content. Yeah.
Right. We did content for the first couple of weeks. Then we did this part because I wanted them to at least know this is what the class normally is doing. And I try to make those correlations, you know, with socioeconomic background and blah, blah, you know, those various things throughout this campaign. But we've got to wrap it up. So, yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, listen, I'll let everybody go. Scott, do you want to say anything as we go?
no, just let me know if I can be helpful. Let's just put in there, you know, particularly as you move toward launching your campaigns, or any questions about group dynamics or anything in the book, let me know.
And it's been great to have stuff happen at Guilford too. I think there was a couple of classes might come out of that, which is, as someone who works in the Bonner Network, it's really something I'm happy about. So, all right, talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Be well, everybody.
Thank you all for making this possible.
Thanks.
Thank you all.